Hello, for those of you joining us, welcome to our Arcoro HR Hour training. My name is Sam and I have Nicole with us today. We will discuss performance reviews best practices. Nicole is a senior implementation manager. She has over 15 years of experience in the learning and training software space. And 7 of those are here with Arcoro. We're excited to have her today. We are also very excited to answer your questions, so please type those into the chat. We will have 2 Q&As today for you today. I said today. Be right after the live presentation, so that way you can ask the questions after seeing it live, and then we'll have another one right after the end. So anything from beginning to end, just let us know and get those typed in. Nicole, I will pass it over to you.
All right, well, thank you, Sam. Hey, everyone. It's great to be here. This is gonna sound cheesy and corny, but I am actually legitimately excited to be here and to talk to you guys about performance today. I kind of feel like this has been a session that's been a long time in the making and something that's gonna be really beneficial for you all. So I am ready to talk to you about performance today. And, whether you are new to our performance system or whether you've been struggling in the performance system, maybe you're ready to get out annual evaluations, or maybe you just want to know some best practices. I think today's session, you're going to come out with some things out of today's session. So again, like Sam said, if you guys have any questions, definitely incorporate those into the chat. So just to give you a little prep on what we're going to do here, and I promise I won't spend much time in the PowerPoint because I hate PowerPoints just as much as you all hate watching them. So just quick to give you a little overview of what we're going to go through today. So first of all, we'll talk about just real briefly employee data review and how you can make sure that your employee data is correct within the system. Then we're going to dive into the system and just talk about everything from updating your actual forms and performance evaluations to how you can manage the goals. And there's a couple things that I want to hit on and make sure I emphasize, because those are the things that are easy to forget about the goals. And then we'll talk about scheduling and assigning out performance evaluations. So we'll talk about all those things. And then that'll actually, just as an FYI for all of you guys, that'll take a big portion of our session today, just getting in and showing you what's going on in there. Then we will talk a little bit more about performance system utilization. So you may or may not be familiar with, or you may have talked a long time ago about how we have some other types of evaluations within the system as well. So not only do we have like the typical annual evaluation, but we also have what we call 360s, project reviews, just depending on what your processes are. So you may not be using those, and that's totally fine, but I do want to make sure that you know what they are and what the benefits are to those. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then at the very end, I want you to come out of this with, especially for those of you who are getting ready to launch this thing towards the end of the year, we are definitely coming upon evaluation season. So if that's you, if that's your organization, I want to make sure you're prepared for what you need to do next. So that's the what's next portion. So just a little bit about the employee data review. You guys may or may not be aware that, some of you may be getting employee data into your performance system differently than some of the others. So that is the reason that we have two different columns here. So the first one is the core HR data pass. So if you have core and you're passing over your data is flowing over into performance, as long as you are updating that information in core, which that's where you should be updating it, then that should have continually always been passing. So if that's not the case, then you want to make sure to go get everybody's information updated in core. And the points that I have here are, first of all, verify, like I said, verify the data in core, especially job codes and performance manager. Those are the big things that influence things on the performance side. So obviously everything, but those are the biggest things you want to look at. Then for those of you who have the core to talent integration, or you're passing the info from core over to performance, you should be receiving an email notification with the errors, if there are errors in that passing. If you are not receiving that notification, you can either contact support or you can contact myself, which my email will be up when we're done. And I would also imagine that of all of you attendees out there, I had quite a few of you for implementation, which it's great to see you all again. Yes, so you can feel free to email me directly as well. Happy to help get that set up. It's a pretty quick thing, so I would be happy to do that for you too. If on the flip side, you are an organization where you don't have core and you are manually getting your employees into the system and manually making those updates, again, what I want to point out is you want to verify the data that you want to verify that the data is correct. So again, including and focusing on job codes and managers. And then I also want to let you know that maybe if you've let a couple months pass, or maybe it's been since last year when you did performance evaluations and you're like, oh yeah, we've got a lot of employee data changes. I don't even know how I'm going to manage it. Something that might help you is requesting from our support team what's called a reverse user import. What that's going to be is an export of all of your current employee data as it is in the performance system in the format that we need you to re-import it back in. So what that'll do is it'll allow you to see just on a big spreadsheet, okay, who do I have set for managers for everybody? Who do I have set for what job codes? And so that'll help you be able to make mass updates. So yes, that's where we're at as far as the employee data review. So again, it just depends on where your data is coming from, but the big things you need to make sure are updated are job codes and managers. And then you can do the appropriate actions as we have listed here for you to make those updates. So that is not the part that I'm going to focus on, even though I probably could for the whole hour. But if you guys have additional questions about that, obviously you can reach out to support. So at this point, what we are going to do is go through a demonstration of the system. And what I want to do is more specifically, kind of like I showed in the PowerPoint, we are going to go through talking about your actual evaluation forms. So we'll just talk about your forms and how you can get those ready to go, especially if you are changing or you've already rolled out a performance evaluation form in the last year. How do you make edits or how do you make changes for this coming year? Or just talking about like, how do I change questions or how do I update those forms? You know, we'll go through all of that, talk about goals, and then talk about how you push those out to your employees. All right, so here's my system, and this is my own personal demo site. So if you see some kind of silly information, that's why. I tried to clean it up for you guys for the most part though. So you guys should all be familiar with the system, of course, just a general, you know, overall navigation review, especially for those of you who may not be super familiar with the system, or you might be new admins taking over for another admin. We've got the account admin area, which is going to show you all the people side of things. We do have reports, which I'm not going to dive in today, but I will tell you they are pretty self-explanatory. So you go into the reports and the title of the report is exactly the data you're going to get, which is why we'll spend time on other things. And then you're going to see as an administrator, you'll have an admin menu. That's where you'll do all your administrative functions. Then there's also a manager tools menu. That's what your managers will have and they will be able to utilize. And just as an FYI then for your managers views, they will only be able to see those people who report to them. So those people who are their direct reports, that's the only people they will see in the system. Whereas if you were to go into there as an administrator, you would see everyone within the organization. Okay, then we of course have the goals, the homepage, and we'll kind of hit up on a few of those other things in a little bit. But before I dive in, and so that I don't forget, as we're kind of talking about the different views and we're talking about managers and end users, I do want to let you know that we have somewhat recently come up with some generic training videos for both your end users as well as your managers. So I want to make sure that you guys know that we'll be sending out links to those after the training today. So for those of you who are maybe going live for the first time, or maybe you're kicking this thing off again for annual evaluations, you will have those videos and links to those videos so that you can roll those out to your employees and to your managers. Been super successful for me with all of my past implementations, so I think it'll be very successful for all of you guys as well. So I am actually going to now turn off my video so that as I'm going through the system, it's less distracting. And then for those of you who might be having connectivity issues or things like that, maybe it would help with that as well. So you don't have that video in there. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off my webcam here. Okay. So let's talk about evaluation forms. A couple of different things here, just in general. Keep in mind that you can create a new form from scratch. You can also copy a form. So those are the two ways that you can create one. I typically suggest to people that they try and copy as many things as they can. You can copy at the evaluation form level, and you can also copy at the question level. So what I'm going to do today is just show you number one, especially if you are an organization who has already rolled out performance evaluations and you already have a form out there, but you want to make edits for this coming year. How do you make those edits? How can you make those changes? And then how can you push that out this next year? So what you've probably or possibly noticed is that once an evaluation form has been assigned, so once you've used an evaluation form, you will no longer be able to make major changes or edits. So that includes things like you can't change the actual number of questions, you can't add a new question, you can't add a new section, you can't change any of the major components of the evaluation form. So what we'll need to do in that instance is just go ahead and copy the form and then make a new version for that year. So we are going to go ahead and do that here today. Now, one thing you can do, and one thing I want to show you, and now let me, I was here by default, but I should navigate here so you guys know how to get there, right? So under Performance Admin, if I go to Add, Edit, Evaluations, this is where I can modify, update, and change any of my, modify, update, change, and create any of my forms. Now, I know sometimes it gets confusing between evaluation administration, which that is the bird's eye view of how your assignments are doing, who's got them, is the manager done, etc., versus the add edit, which is where you manage the actual forms. Okay, so here under this simple evaluation form, this is the one that I am going to make modifications to today. Just as a reminder, under this action column here, if you need to see what content is currently on the form, what you can do is click on these three dots right here and then click preview. So when we do that, it gives us a nice little preview of what the form looks like, what content we have in it. And so that's really nice. And that's kind of how you're going to know, do I need to add more content? Do I need to add a question? Do I need to take away, etc. Okay, so one thing I do also actually want to show you here real quickly is notice how this look and feel is a little bit more modern than the default. Also, one of the big things with this look and feel that I have on this evaluation form is we have bigger radio buttons, especially if anybody happens to be accessing the evaluation form from maybe like an iPad or something like that. Versus if you were to just take an evaluation and create it from scratch, it's going to look a little bit more like this. So what we do have from one of our developers is some CSS, and I'll show you where that can be put into your evaluation form. I'll actually send out that CSS after today's session in the follow-up as well, so that if you guys wanted to update the look and feel of your evaluation form to make it feel a little bit more modern, you're more than welcome to do so. So a couple different areas on the form that you can modify or that you can go into where you make the changes to the form. Now, the first thing we need to do is if we rolled out this evaluation form last year and now we want to make changes and then roll it out again, a similar one, just make some updates to it and push it out this year, we are not going to be able to make changes to the form we already assigned. Remember, we can't make major changes. So what we'll want to do is under this action column here, I'm going to click copy. And when I do that, now what it's going to do is bring me, so now I can see it says copy of. So now I'm just going to change it to 2023 simple evaluation form. So that's the one we'll stick with today during our session here. This is what we call the evaluation details screen. So also from that action column, I had the ability to go to this evaluation details screen. And so I just want to talk through a couple of the things that you're going to see in here and a couple of the things that you can modify. So first of all, of course, we have the title of the form. I would just name that to describe the form. This is what you will see throughout the system, anywhere the form is listed. So just make sure it's descriptive and what you need it to be. Form instructions, some people will put like mission statement, values, rating scale descriptions. Like there's a lot of different things you can put in the form instructions here. So feel free to utilize that if you're not already and you need some sort of text on there. Maybe it's instructions for your managers on how to do the performance evaluation. You know what, you can get creative and put what you'd like in there. Then from an advanced settings perspective, first of all, in regards to sign-offs, you can require a sign-off. We have this require sign-off here, and then we have require employee sign-off on manager evaluation. Both of those sign-offs are a PIN that has to be set by the individual that they would use to sign off on. I know a lot of times when we think of the word PIN, we think of like it's just culturally in our brains that means like a 4-digit number, right? Because a PIN is what you use with your debit card. That is not the case here. And in fact, if you do require the sign-offs, it's alphanumeric. It can be as long as they want. So I typically suggest telling your employees to make it the same as their password so they can remember it. But the require sign off here, if you're doing self-evals, then it would require them to sign off on the self-eval, and it would require the manager to sign off on their portion of the eval as well. Then if we have require employee sign off on manager evaluation, what that means is that the employee would sign off with their PIN on the manager's screen when the manager has the evaluation open and they're ready to finalize it. Another part of evaluation forms is approvals. So we have a couple different options for approvals. First of all, we have this require manager post approval. What that is going to do is it's going to go on to the manager's manager. So this is the one dynamic option that you have as far as who it's going to for approval. So whoever the manager is that's filling out the evaluation on their employee, it would go on to their manager set within that hierarchy that you've loaded into the system for employee data. Your other option would be we have these additional approvers down here. And so this is where you could set someone specifically. Where I've seen this come into play a lot of times is for like if you have an organization where it goes on to the manager's manager and then someone in HR needs to see it, that's where this comes in great. So if Eric is our HR guy and all of our evaluations need to go through him, I would select his name so that all evaluation forms would go to him. In regards to some of the other settings that you see here, we do also have include salary and header. So you can, if you're loading salary information into the system, then you can have that placed in the header up where like first name, last name, manager, date of hire, all those things are up at the top. You can get salary in there as well. And then lastly, we have include score on evaluation. So what this would do is at the very bottom, it would show an overall score on the evaluation. And what I mean by that is the manager score. It doesn't show an overall score for the self-eval. And then it would also break it down by competency. And you get a lot of stuff out of that include score on evaluation form. As far as the report goes, you want to choose combined if you're doing both self and manager, and you want to choose standard if it's just manager. This way the PDF in the end displays correctly so that you can see all the info you might want to see once the evaluation is finalized. And custom styling. If those of you who are using performance evaluations and you're pretty familiar with them, this is probably a section you probably stayed away from. I also did so until our developer created that CSS that I just told you guys about that we can just copy and paste into here, and then it can make your evaluation form look a little bit more updated. So again, like I said, I will be sending you guys that CSS. It's pretty long. It's a pretty long script, but please put it in here. It'll give it a little updated look and feel that makes those radio buttons bigger too, which can be really nice as well. So custom styling is where you'll be putting that. And then lastly, for those of you who have business units, that's a whole nother discussion. So we're just going to leave that alone for now. And that's everything on the evaluation details side. So the key thing to remember is that the evaluation details really have a lot to do with how the flow of your performance evaluation is going to go, not necessarily when you assign it. Most of those flow things happen through the evaluation details. So we're going to go ahead and save this evaluation form. And when I do so, now here is our saved copy, right? Our 2023 form. Now let's go take a look at the original that I had, my simple evaluation form. Under the action column, if I click evaluation details, that's going to take us to that same page that we just reviewed for this form. What I actually want to show you though is if I go to the questions tab, and the questions area is where I control both my section settings and my question information as well. So I'm going to go to questions. And when I do so, do you guys see here how my new question button is grayed out? I can't click onto it. And if I were to try and edit a question, I can edit like the wording, but I can't add questions. And in my section settings, notice how things are grayed out too. I can't make changes. So what that means is there's an assignment tied to that form. So if I want to make changes, I need to copy the form and make changes to that, which is what we just did, right? So we've used that simple evaluation form, and now for this year, we're going to go into our, I don't even know why I used 2023. This year it's 2022, I am aware. Okay, so 2023, we're going to go in. I'm preparing you if you do January evals. So I'm going to go into 2023, and then if I go to questions, this is where I can modify. So now see, my new question is black. I can create new questions and I have my section settings. So let's take a look at the section settings real quick first. Couple different things in here. First of all, if you want to include goals, which we will talk very specifically about goals here in just a few minutes. If you want to include goals into your performance evaluation, it is as simple as checking these boxes right here. Okay, we have two sections tied to goals. We control those. There's not a lot that you can change about those, but we've done it intentionally so that goals can filter in and out as they need to, just based on when they're going to be worked on. When I talk with my manager during my performance review about my goals, there's really two different conversations that we're having, right? So the first conversation is around those goals that I have been working on and how have I been doing in regards to those. And my other conversation with my manager is, what goals am I going to be working on in this coming year? So that's what these two sections broken down are for. I have my managed current goals, which will be all those I've been working on, and upcoming is where I set my goals for the future. So that's where, just note that for how you want to maybe turn on or off those different sections. Some organizations, when first rolling out performance reviews, will turn off the managed current goals because they just want to do electronic goals from that first time moving forward. And that's fine. You don't have to do both sections. Now you can add additional sections if you want to. So for example, one of the most common formattings that I've seen in performance evaluations is they'll have like competencies, which are core competencies for the entire organization. And then some organizations will have like job specific competencies. So what are we all working on? What do I work on specifically in my area? And then I have goals to address my individual tasks that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. So you can add in new sections if you want. So here, if I did job specific competencies, I could add in that section. Here's one thing I need you guys to know is that we do have weighting, and it is on the section level. We do not have question level weighting, but we do have section level weighting. And so you will have to make sure before moving away from this page that all your sections equal 100%. Now I want my job specific competencies to be up here under our company competencies. So I'm going to use these arrows to move it up. I can use this pencil icon to edit the section, to edit the weight, to edit the section name, and that even includes the goal sections. You can modify and change the goal sections, and note that we just have a default descriptor, but you might want to change that to something that helps people in your organization from the goal perspective. Keep in mind also with those sections, you can hide an entire section on the self form. So if you're an organization that has self or employee self-evaluations, in addition to manager evaluations, you can check this box and hide an entire section, or I'll show you here in a little bit how you can hide individual questions as well. Okay. So that's about everything from the section perspective. And you guys, I know I'm breezing through this, but there's a lot of information that I want to make sure that you guys, that I can get to today and that you can see. So that is the sections. Again, if you have questions, definitely put those into the chat. Now, as far as sections go, as far as questions go, we have a couple of different options on the question side of things. So when I click on that new question button, this would be creating a question from, well, I have two options when I click create new question. I can create one from scratch with this blank question area. So here I can use this drop down, and then it gives me a lot of options for a lot of different question types. I'm here to tell you that you don't need to know what all of these mean, nor do you really need to be using all of them. My recommendation is the big ones you use are either radio button matrix, which is kind of a cool way to do, like if you have 3 or 4 performance statements for each competency, or you just have real short performance statements and a fairly manageable rating scale. And what I mean by that is like maybe 5 ratings or less, 5 options or less. It's kind of just a cool matrix of radio buttons that can make the filling out of it really slick and probably quicker for your managers. So radio button matrix, text box, 7 to 10 words, text area, my comment boxes. Really, really, really important to know. If you need a comment box on your performance evaluation, do text area, not text box. That's by far the most common mistake I see when people build their evaluation forms. They use the text box instead of the text area. Text area, I'll get to type endless things. So I can either create a question from scratch, or my other option is I can select one of these evaluation forms and copy over the question. So for example, I could select my evaluation form, and then I want to copy this one, and this one. You could copy as many as you want. If you're first creating evaluation, the nice thing is I can grab all of these to copy them, and then I can hit save. And so then I have my rating scale in all these. I just change the competency. So let's go in and take a look at what those questions and the question setup look like. Under my action column, once again, now I have a pencil icon for each of my questions. So by clicking on that pencil icon, I can come in and make changes. So here, maybe I want this to be job knowledge. So now it's taken on all the properties of my previous question, which I'm just going to run through these real briefly here. Obviously, we want the question to be active. We can make an individual question required. I do not recommend making it bold here. I would just make it bold up here so that it's bold in the spot that everybody recognizes it to be bold. Don't do just trust me, don't do page breaks. And then here's that setting I was talking about where you can hide the question on the self form. For those of you who are using Succession and you want to be passing info to Succession, this competency right here is pretty important. Make sure you select that. We give you a pre-populated list. I'll show you in just a moment where you can update those competencies as well. It doesn't have to be the ones that we have set there for you. And then lastly down here, this is where you set the rating scale. You have full control over this. It can be a 10 point, 5 point, 3 point, 2 point, whatever you want to put here. You click the add row and add another option. You can see here I just had a 3-point scale with the row values of 3, 2, 1. This is the text that appears on the form. You could even do this if you want them to see the 3, but it is very common practice nowadays that people want the managers to focus on the words and not on the numbers. So I see that very rarely at this point. Also, another tidbit, if you need to give an NA option, put that row value at -1. What that's going to do is it's going to tell the system if someone answers NA and it sees that the value is -1, it actually removes the question from the scoring versus giving that individual a 0. So you can make that that rating scale how you want it to be. I do have sample ratings. I have some that I Googled that I just put together in a sheet. It's not super formal or anything, but if any of you guys are struggling on that and you want me to send that out as part of the follow-up afterwards, please put that in the chat and I'll be happy to include that as well. Also, for those of you who want to get creative or you're trying to figure out what to do, one really cool thing I've seen from a couple of my customers is that they did a red, yellow, green scale for their mid-year evaluation. It was great because what it did is it made a non-threatening way for the manager and the employee to get on the same page, but the employee doesn't have to feel bad about it. So for example, like maybe my manager rates me as a red on my mid-year, but red doesn't mean that I'm doing bad. Maybe red just means for my goal that I haven't started it yet because it's actually a Q4 goal. So I haven't touched it yet because it's only Q3, kinds of things like that. So, you can get really creative in how you're setting up these rating scales to make sure that you're getting out of it what you want to get out of it. Because I think it's the performance evaluations are really steering away from being just a numerical value that I give this individual for their merit increase, more so to like, we want to start more fluid communication processes between employees and managers. And I hear that all the time. And so doing it a little bit more frequently, and that might be in phases, right? So maybe you do it have a mid-year and then an annual, or once every quarter or something like that. And maybe you slim down the ones that aren't the annual evaluation. You guys, you have so many different options. And also, like I said, making the rating scale less threatening, taking the numbers, like those are things that can increase the value in it, and I think make that conversation between the employee and the manager less threatening. So there, that was my soapbox, and you guys just got all my knowledge on performance evaluations. Okay, so that's the individual question and how it can be created. Let's see here, just making sure I haven't missed anything. You can, of course, move the questions up and down and change the order, trash any of those questions, and down here's your current goals. You can just see where current and upcoming goals, you can just see where that goal information is. All right. So that for the most part is everything around managing and maintaining your forms. So now what I want to do is go through I want to go through goal information, and there's a couple things, like I said earlier, that I really want to highlight because there's some things that cause failures later on down the road, or I know that support gets pulled into, that are things that hopefully through training we can prevent, right? To make your lives better, to make everyone's lives better, and all your employees' lives better too, right? So I am going to go under here now as an admin, even as an admin, to see all the goals. I actually use the Manager Tools menu. So by going into the Manager Tools menu, now I'm going to go to Manage Goals. And this is also what your managers can use. And again, like I said earlier, your managers are only going to see their direct reports, but I as an admin can see everyone within the organization. And keep in mind, you can use this search bar up here to filter and find specific people that you might be looking for. I'm not going to focus on that today quite as much as showing you and just going through real quickly what are the different parts of the goal creation process. So just as a reminder, goals can be created through the form in that upcoming goals section, obviously, like we just talked about. If those goals are created in the form, they will transfer back here into the manage goals area. It doesn't have to be either or, but I will tell you that most organizations are probably managing the goals through the form. They don't typically come into here, but you could do them all through the goals area if you wanted to. The system gives you that flexibility, so it's really up to you and how you feel like your managers will utilize the system and what works best for your organization. So to create a new goal through here, I would click on this add goal button. And we don't have specifically like cascading of goals, like technically, and I'm doing quotes even though you can't see me doing it, technically cascading of goals, but what you can do is what we call assigning goals. So you can select as many users or as many employees as you want that should be receiving this goal. So like if it's Sean and Jason and Eric, I can select those guys as they should be getting this goal. Or if there's something that my CEO has said, hey, we got to get this goal out to everybody needs to be accomplishing this year, I can select everybody up here at the top. Also, if you are not familiar, there is, anytime you come into a people picker, in the upper right corner, we have a filter, and this filter allows you to filter by manager, location. I got business units. If you do too, you'll have those, but you can do it by groups, departments, job codes. You have different ways you can narrow down those results to find those employees that you're looking for. However, right now, I'm just going to choose a few people to make our lives a little bit easier and then go ahead and click that save button. So now I've selected these 3 employees, and so what I'm doing here is I'm entering in a goal for them. So we'll just say that this is, we'll keep on track with our not really very timely 2023. That'll make it stand out amongst all my other 2022s I've gotten here. So we'll just say goal for 2023, whatever the name of that goal might be. We do also have step tracking. So if you would like to incorporate step tracking, you can place a yes here. Again, this is completely subjective to really what your organization needs and what you guys like to use. Some organizations make their goals specific enough that step tracking is useless. And maybe if you make them broad enough, then step tracking is really helpful. Again, totally depends on your culture and your environment. But if you do check step tracking yes here, at the very bottom, I can click this add step and add in my steps. Okay. Perfect. Adding in my steps. You can also choose if they need to be completed in a certain order or not. So I can say yes or no. And if I say yes, then once I've created them, I do have the ability to drag and drop and move those around if I didn't put them in the right spot that I wanted them to be in. Then I also have a goal description that I can put in. And now we're going to talk about these dates, which this, if you guys hear nothing else around my goal talk that I'm about to give you, I want you to hear this around the dates. Ignore start date and end date for me for just a second. Let's talk about due date. Due date is just a standard date that gives someone a goal for when they, or the ideal timing for when they should have a goal done. So for example, if I need to have this goal done by the end of Q3, then I'm going to go ahead and say September 30th. Okay, so this is just giving the employee a date in which they need to have the goal completed. This ties to nothing in the system other than communication to the employee. Here's when we want you to get it done. Now, if you're an organization that's had our system for a few years, or if you're an organization that's just on the brink and you're getting into it, we talked about the current goals section where it's going to pull in the goals that you've been working on this last year. How is the system supposed to know that? Well, how it knows that is based on the start date and the end date of the goal. Because we have recurring evaluations, we had to tie this to each individual goal. So these dates are super important. What we're going to do here is really based on your organization, but let me first tell you how the system works functionally. Any evaluation forms assigned between the start date and the end date of the goal, those are the goals that pull in to the current goals section. Okay, I'm going to say that one more time, and then I'm going to give you some examples. Any goals where the start date and the end date are bookends to the evaluation date. So if the evaluation assignment date lands between the start date and the end date of the goal, that goal will pull into the current goals section. So a couple different examples here. If you are an organization where you roll out your performance evaluations based on anniversary date, I have a very, very handy little chart that I am going to send you with all the dates that you should put in there. So that chart you will be able to send to your employees, send to your managers so they know what dates to put in there, but I'll also show you. So I am a May anniversary, and I know that because my start date was May the 4th. And so I remember the first day I came in, one of my coworkers had like the Princess Leia buns. So that's the only way I can remember it. So anyways, I am a May. So what I would do here is really honestly the start date, that can just be the date that the goal is created. That really doesn't matter. The end date is what's super important. So what I would do is put then May 31st of 2023, and technically if this is a 2023 evaluation, we'd do 2024. So the end of the anniversary month of the following year. So then that gives me to the end of the month to assign the performance evaluation to this individual so that this goal pulls through. Okay, again, I'll send a chart so that you guys can see and know based on what anniversary date I have, what should the start date and end date be. Now, for those organizations where you roll out in October of every year, same thing applies to you for start date. Start date can just be the day that the evaluation, the day that the goal is created. However, what you will want to do for the end date is do something, well, not do something like, here is what you want to do. You want to make sure, so if October is your anniversary month, then you'll do the end of October of the following year. So if I were to assign this out this October, I'd do October of the following year, so October of 2023. If I'm in 2023, it'd be October of 2024. So that way next year, I just have to assign the evaluation before October 31st of 2023. I get that that can be confusing, so put those questions in the chat if you have any questions around that. All right. So trekking right along here, we talked about evaluation forms, we've talked about goals. Now let's talk about how we can, well, let me say one more thing around goals before we go into scheduling. I will go ahead and save this goal. Last couple things. If your managers have updates throughout the year, first of all, if they want to just take some general notes throughout the year in the system, not necessarily anything formal, the managers under the manager tools menu have a notes area. So this notes area is where they can just take notes on specific employees. They can go access them. It goes nowhere. It's just for them if they wanted to copy and paste it into evaluation later or something like that. Just gives them their own personal space to make those notes. Now, around the goals and the goal process, if you wanted to, like, let's see if we can get Bernie's goal to come up here, which, by the way, as I'm doing this, Bernie is one of my coworkers, and one time I was doing a training and he got mad at me because he heard me saying his name in one of my trainings, so it was pretty fantastic. Okay, so for Bernie's goal, and he can't hear me because we're all at home now, but unfortunately not. Over here under the action column, you can edit the goal, you can copy the goal, but the biggest one I want to show you is, well, first of all, you can delete it too, but the biggest one I want to show you is that we have this comments here. What the comments do is they allow me to do progress tracking. So if I have steps in my goal, I would check it, add my update here, and then when I click on add update, it will update my progress tracker automatically. So 1 of 3, 33%. If I had 4, it would be 25%. So it does calculate that automatically. If there are no steps, which is totally fine, you can manually adjust that progress tracker if you would like, or you can put in generic comments here by clicking add comment and just putting in those comments and clicking save. Okay, so those are where we can make updates to the goal, manager can make updates to the goal, etc. All right. Now let's talk about how we can get those evaluation forms out and how we can schedule them. So we have 2 different ways that this can happen. The first way is through what we call schedule evaluations. The second way is through what we call assign evaluations. I am going to focus today on the schedule evaluations because that's the thing that most of you are going to be using for your annuals. The schedule is just an expedited way of doing the assigning. The biggest difference, though, that I want to make sure that you know is that under performance admin in that schedule evaluations, you must do that at least 1 day in advance. So I'm going to say that one more time in a different way just so everybody hears it. Under the performance admin schedule evaluations, there are no same day assignments. We must do it at least 1 day in advance. If you need something to assign out immediately, which if you're doing testing, maybe you want to try something out, manager tools, assign evaluation is for you. If we're doing the big assignments and doing the scheduling and I want this to go out 3 months from now, that's where our schedule evaluations is going to come into play. So here under performance admin, I'm going to go to schedule evaluations. And when I do so here, what that's going to allow me to do now is go in and set up my scheduler. So by clicking on new item, first of all, I'm going to select which form it is that I want to schedule. So let's just stick with ours, this 2023 simple form. Next, you can choose your schedule rules. So you can assign it either by job code, where you would select the job code or job codes that you would like to assign it to. So that would include everybody in those job codes, or you could have selected the people option and just hand-picked people. Then we have exception rules. Maybe I have some new hires that are in there that I don't want to be assigned. So that's how I can use my exception rules to remove those new hires. And I can either do that by hand selecting them and saying, hey, Nicole's a new hire, she shouldn't be assigned. Or my other option is I can use the evaluations and then say, okay, anybody who's been assigned, and for example, if you have a 90-day or 60-day form, this is great because you can say, just pretend this is our 90-day form. I can say, hey, anybody who's had our 90-day form within the last 120 days, I don't want them getting this evaluation form. So the system will calculate that and do all the work for you. It's fantastic. Next, we have schedule by. Let's talk about what all these are going to be used for. Hire date. This is what I'm going to use for my 60-day, 90-day after hire evaluation assignment. Days after hire promotion. If it's a 60-day, that'll be 60. If it's 90-day, that'll be 90. That's what you'll use the hire date for. The difference between hire date and anniversary date is that hire date does consider the year, whereas anniversary date does not consider the year. So what that means is if you were to try and assign something to me based on hire date, that's long gone 8 years ago, 7 years ago, however long I've been working here. So it'll never go out to me. I will never get it. But if you do it by anniversary date, next time May 4th comes around, it's gonna assign to me. So that's the difference between those two. So for those of you who do it based on anniversary date, this is your golden ticket to that. And when you select that one, schedule days before due. How many days before their anniversary date do you want them to get it? Because most organizations want that done by their anniversary date so they can have the merit increases by their anniversary date as well. So maybe it's 21 days, maybe it's 30 days, whatever your process is, do that here. For those of you who are my monthly, we do it every October crew, here we're going to select, like, for example, let's say we're going to roll it out on October 17th. So we just choose October 17th, and at that point, it goes out to everyone I selected up here on October 17th. Very, very simple. Next evaluation date and last promotion date are both fields in the system that require manual entry and updating. I have only seen 2 people at this point, after we've made a lot of updates to this page, who had very specific examples where we even needed to use these. So if you are one of those, we can help you get that set up, but the other 3 options I just gave you should hit on about 99.9% of the scenarios we've got out there. Recurring. You can set up an evaluation form to be recurring. So what that would do is it would allow you to say, okay, well, if you're doing quarterly, I want this to go out every 90 days, etc. Recurring until gives you the opportunity to say, I only want this to continue assigning until X date and then it stops. And then the ongoing, what that means is if I check that, all these recurring evaluations will combine into one PDF form versus if I don't check that, each of the recurring evaluations will be in a separate PDF accessed in the employee's profile. Must complete by days. This is going to give me the opportunity to say how many days that they have to complete the evaluation form. This is really, really, really important. If you have an annual evaluation form that you want everybody to complete no matter what, you need to come in here and do like 300 days so you don't even have to mess with it. Some people will put like 30 days, and then what happens is your manager goes in to fill out the evaluation and it's disappeared. It will disappear if not finalized after that number of days, but you can go back in, you can edit this number and extend that out. And then it will reappear for them and they will not have lost anything. Email reminders, I have the option to do daily, every 3 days, weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly. And yes, it will only send out to them until they have completed it. And once they complete it, it will stop. Why I would hide in employee history, I'm not exactly sure, but you could if you really wanted to. But I feel like the point of this is to give people more access and make this easier for all. Perspective. Ultimately, we want the perspective to be the manager. By letting it be the manager, that gives it, that'll take it to the manager. And then if you want to do a self with it, you'll check this down here. The only time you select self here is if it's a true self eval and doesn't go on to anyone else. And then if you want the manager comments to be hidden until the evaluation form is finalized, you can check this box here. Okay, again, I know I went through that really fast, but I've had so many fun things that I wanted to show you guys that I just had to, I had to go quickly. So what we're gonna do at this point is just stop for a second and give you guys the opportunity to ask a couple questions.
Thank you, Nicole. We did get a question. So when you were at the custom CSS screen,
yes,
the question was asked, it says, what about the logo, URL, and form ID? Within the evaluation detail page, those 2 fields. And we might need to get more clarification later, but does that, let's see if that made kind of sense to you what she's asking?
yes, I'm good. Yep, we're good. So the form ID, full disclosure, it does nothing. So don't even worry about it unless you personally need to more easily, uniquely identify all of your performance evaluation forms. So it would just be your purposes. It doesn't show up anywhere else other than that evaluation details screen. As far as the URL for your logo, we don't have a spot in performance evaluations to upload your logo. We just have a spot for putting a URL to a logo. So what you'll need to do is put your logo somewhere where you can get a URL, whether that's like on a SharePoint site, or I think you can use websites like tinyurl.com, or sometimes even your logo you can capture from your website. There'll be a URL. So it's things like that where when you populate that URL, then your logo will appear on your evaluation form.
Great, thank you so much.
Yes.
So the next one I have is, when can an employee see their finished review?
Yes, so an employee can see their finished review after the review has been approved, if there are approvers, or obviously then, of course, once it's been finalized. Just as an FYI for you all, there is no notification around that, so the employee is not going to get a notification letting them know that they can see it. They would need to log in to go view it.
Thank you. So that is this section of questions. So back over to you for the additional PowerPoint that you have. And then any other questions, please get those in so we can answer them here in a few minutes.
Perfect. Okay, I know with the PowerPoint, you guys all want to see my beautiful face. So I'm bringing it back to you again. It'll make the PowerPoint more exciting maybe. So other performance system utilization things, and I'm just going to do a time check here to make sure I'm good. Okay, so in addition to just a typical annual evaluation form, we also have what are called 360s, and we also have what are called project reviews. If your organization needs some additional things outside of the functionality or the workflow or things that you've seen within those standard evaluations, you've got these two options. Beautiful thing about them both that I did write that on here. Beautiful thing about them both. Check out this top bullet point. The evaluation is created the exact same as you create the annual evaluation. So everything I just showed you applies to these. The only difference is in the form type, you would either select project, or in the form type, you would select 360. If you don't see either of those options when you go to create a performance evaluation form, check with support. We just need to get some permissions turned on for you. So it's not a big deal. It's not that you haven't purchased it. This goes along with the regular performance system. It's just we need to get it turned on so you can use it. So not a big deal there at all. 360s. These are an anonymous way to get feedback. So what I've seen people do here is maybe the executive team rates each other through 360s. I have seen where right before annual evaluation forms, employees have a bunch of different people rate them. So whether that be peers or other people they've been working with and things like that. So the 360 is truly anonymous feedback, and you just get this summary in the end. So like I said here, completed results, the rater is not known, and then you get a summary feedback report. So even if I'm reading it on here or if I'm saying it, I say the same thing, which I feel like is good, right? So then project reviews, we actually came up with this because in the construction industry, so many times what ends up happening is I've got my laborer who's working on the job site. And as they're working on the job site, their formal performance manager doesn't see a single thing that they do on the job site. So how are they supposed to complete that individual's performance evaluation? Good question. So we created project reviews to give your foremans, your project managers, your superintendents the ability to very quickly pass their feedback on each person who is on their job site to their formal performance manager. It's really slick. So for example, my superintendent could wrap up all of their normal construction project things and then initiate these themselves. It's beautiful. That's the ad hoc, no assignments. They initiate it themselves. And then when they complete it, the manager gets a notification, and then it would be the manager's responsibility to take all that feedback they get and incorporate that then into the annual evaluation. So for project reviews, the employee would not see any of it unless the manager decides to share it with them. So I wanted to give you a little bit of information about that. Obviously, we're not going to get into the details of those today, but I would recommend that if any of you guys would like additional training or you're hoping for more info on those, please let us know that in the chat as well, because that could also be another topic that we go through. We love to get you guys' feedback on that stuff. So let us know if you're looking for more training around those. Lastly, where to go from here. I promised you I wouldn't leave you hanging, and I'm going to tell you how to move forward from here. So screenshot this, guys, if you are, and we'll send this out too, I think, but screenshot this if you're getting ready to go live with your performance evaluations, and this is you that's ready to roll these out here in the end. First of all, what you want to do, make sure that your evaluation forms are finalized. Time and time again in implementation, the thing that by far takes the most amount of time is the evaluation forms. So that's the thing, because if you need to get feedback from managers, feedback from executive team, whoever it might be, that's a part that's going to take a while. So get that initiated, get those forms finalized, and then get them into the system. Second, verify your employee data. Make sure that's all correct. So just so we talked about in the beginning, right? Core to talent, let's get you that email. Again, if you're not getting that, my email address is going to be up here in just a second. Email me, I'll help you get it. If you're not, manually do the changes or submit to support for a reverse user import if you need your data out of there to know how to correct it. Test the system. I strongly encourage you guys do this. We talked about schedule evaluations today, but use that manager tools assign evaluation to assign it out. And remember, you have the impersonate option. So by clicking on your name in the upper right corner, you can impersonate, and hopefully you've got some test users in the system that you can use and impersonate to go through just as if you were an employee. And if you don't have test users in there, feel free to create them. We're not going to charge you for those or anything like that. So get some test users in there that you can utilize. Communicate with employees and managers as needed. Again, I mentioned this a little bit before, but I'm going to say it one more time. We have now created standardized videos for end user and manager training. So we will get those out to you guys, and we'll make sure you have the links to those so that you can pass those on. If you also have our LMS, if you're wondering, can I put that in as a course in the LMS? The answer is yes. Yes, you can. Plan ahead for how your employees will log in. If they are already logging into Core, perfect. Those are the credentials they use and they get in. If not, have you sent the welcome message and have they gotten their credentials? If so, you don't need to do it again. Or maybe plan for, I know my employees got their login information, but no one's going to remember their password. Get some forgot password directions. So just say, hey, we're going to use the forgot password link. Here's how you do that to reset your password. Turn on notifications. We did not have the chance to get into notifications today, but under your account admin area, company settings, that's where you've got your notifications. And the big ones are the evaluation notice and then the reminder of the evaluation. So evaluation notice is going to be the notification that sends out when the performance evaluation has been assigned, and then of course the reminder that we just talked about setting. And lastly, go ahead and schedule them and send them out. So I want to give you guys one more chance to ask questions. So I know I ended that very abruptly. Here we have need more one-on-one training or assistance, definitely contact your AM, or if you have ideas for more training, I'm sure Sam will say this in a second. So I'm probably stealing her thunder and I'm talking really fast. So here's my email address, especially if you are not getting those emails and you have Core to Talent, please let me know. Happy to get that set up for you. So I'm going to leave that up so you guys, I'm going to leave that up so you guys can watch that even though we're going to Q&A.
Thank you. So we'll do just a couple here. I know we are running up against the time. So let's see. What if the review goes to the wrong manager? How do I fix that?
That's a great question. Our system handles manager switches wonderfully. If it's gone to the wrong manager, we just need to update it. If you're using Core, update that performance manager in Core. And then if you are not aware, we have recently updated the paths from Core to Talent to go every 4 hours. So within about 4 to 8 hours max, you should see that update take place. Or if you're not using that, you can manually update the manager in the system in the account admin area. And then the beauty is the system will automatically switch the evaluation from the old manager to the new manager. It actually keeps the old manager's comments and everything in there. So the new manager can change those, update them, scrap them, do whatever they want with them, which is kind of nice, especially if they haven't been that person's manager. It's kind of nice to see what the other person wrote. So yeah, the system handles those great.
Thank you so much. All right, we will do one more. Can I resend the notification if the manager says they haven't received it?
That's a good question. We do not have the ability to resend that notification, but really the only thing that notification is for is to let them know they have an evaluation in the system to complete. So at the point in time they're asking you if it can be resent, they probably have a hunch that they have one to complete. So if they just go log in, it will be there. So we are not able to resend that, but I think that just reminding them, and then of course, remember you can use your reports to see who has and hasn't completed those. You also have the evaluation administration area to go see who has started, who hasn't started, where are they at in the process, etc.
Okay. Thank you for that. So that is what we have time for today with questions. If you asked one and we have not gotten back to you, we'll get back to you via email after the presentation. So thank you so much for your time today. We look forward to seeing you on October's HR Hour. In the meantime, please look out for those 9 at 9s like Nicole said. They're every Thursday at 9 a.m. Central and 9 a.m. Pacific. So we will do topics like the project review. That'd be a great 9-minute training to do to really dive into that. So keep an eye out, ask your AM, ask your CSM, and we look forward to seeing you there. And thank you for attending.
Thanks,
Nicole.
everybody.